we're discussing Torah Sheba'al Peh, but we're looking at Moshe Feinstein's perspective from his Hakdama to Iggrot Moshe. And the key point we've come to so far.
What's Hakdama and Iggrot Moshe?
His Hakdama, his introduction to Hakdama to the Iggrot Moshe. It's the name of his sefer, which is a Shalos and Shuvah sefer. Okay, sorry, I heard so it's where it's at. But what we have is we finished the first two paragraphs. What we sort of saw in Moshe's thinking is an idea where let me phrase it like this. We sort of saw an idea where he really seems to be stressing an idea of process. Okay, for those people on camera, someone at the shear just tried opening up a seltzer, a bottle of seltzer, and it just spritched all over. That's the humor here. Okay. Okay. So, what we saw for Moshe was an aspect where he seems to value process. In other words, the introduction of Torah Sheba'al Peh, in the manner in which it was introduced, which was basically within a methodology that human beings have to investigate. Human beings have to investigate the Torah and come up with some kind of understanding and perspectives and stuff of that nature. Basically, he comes to an idea that the process, i.e. the fact that you have to study and analyze itself, seems to be of the essence. And that's really what he says. If you look at his sentence, he says over here, I'll just give his statement here, that he says that if someone puts in all the efforts, okay, and all the analysis, then he's someone who's able to do so, okay. Okay, is different. He says that if you look in the second paragraph, this is really a statement which I consider to really stress the value of process. So look in the second paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay.
Yeah.
10 lines from the bottom. Okay. He says, "Chachaka gadol lezeh." You see the statement in the middle of the middle of the second paragraph. Chachaka gadol lezeh. And what he's trying to develop here is there's going to be different viewpoints and different perspectives, because the human beings are involved and human thought is involved, which will lead to various different perspectives. A classic statement that no two human beings think alike.
Yeah.
Okay? The same way that everyone's face is different, everyone's thought processes are different. And he says, and he comes down to this idea that the idea, I'm going to even go harder above that. He says this, go a couple lines above this. Okay? Okay? He says, look at the fourth line from the top. According to the way the Chacham analyzes the halacha with all the sources, according to his abilities, with respect, and taking it seriously, he wants to get it right because he's in awe and doesn't want to make a mistake before God. And that's what he considers to be the psak din. Hu ha'emes ha'lohara. That's the truth. What he calls emes ha'ara. That's the way he has to paskin. Mechuyev lahoros kain, and he's obligated to paskin like that. Afim be'etzem gaya kapi shmaya, even though it may be that the real truth that God knows, God alone knows, she'enu kenu perush, that this is not true. In other words, it's the idea that this is the best possible conclusion that this human being, who has the right to analyze and has the right to analyze because he has put in the correct effort and has the correct background to get this idea, but he's still human.
Right.
He's still human. He still can only do the best he can. Yeah.
Just want to say that I think this learning should be in honor of the soldiers going in, as close to the soldiers going to war for tonight.
Yeah. Should be just to the aside. Our learning should be for Leah's neshama of Eyal and Gilad and Naphtali. There is something that I just to the aside, but there's something I hope to put up on Huffington Post soon. But
oh, nice.
But what happened to me, it seems to have totally, this kidnapping seems to have totally affected Klal Yisrael. It's just so hard. The whole Jewish community. And the question is, why is this so? The question I feel is why this? We've been subject to terrorism before.
Right.
We've been subject to a lot of things of this nature. Why did this get us?
That's the question.
And pardon?
No, it's a good question. It's a good question.
And I feel there's many possible answers. First of all, just the dramatics of it. We had hope, and the hope was shattered. We saw strength in the families. Naphtali's mother had remarkable strength. But I feel that there's something else happening in the world. Terrorism, the academic study of terrorism, if you want to look at it that way, came out of its use in Algeria against the French. And the person who wrote the book in it was a guy named Frantz Fanon. And what terrorism was an argument that the ends justifies the means. In other words, we understand this is a terrible thing to do. We understand terrorism is terrible, but it's so terrible these people have to resort to such a terrible act because the situation is so bad. That was always the argument for terrorism. Now, is it really so bad? I mean, the truth of the matter is it justified? Does it justify? And then you get into questions, does the end justify the means? But it seems that there was a sense where people even talk about it. It's like liberals always talk about it. It's like with criminals. It's like, look how bad the situation is that they had to resort to crime. Look how bad the situation is. Look how bad the situation is. In other words, normal people would never do such a thing. It just shows how bad the situation is.
Right.
So there's always this idea that the terrorist himself was almost like a victim.
Yeah, victimized.
Because they're not just victimized, but they themselves are victims because they do something so bad, and they know it's so bad because they feel so victimized. What I've been seeing, and I think this applies with other groups in the Middle East, ISIS and stuff like that, is that, and I think it really applied with this kidnapping. There was no cheshbonos in this kidnapping. There was no concept of the ends justifying the means. It was simply because it was stupid. You're going to kidnap these kids. Who's going to bargain with them? Politically, there was no. The Arabs would never bargain with these kids because they're trying to come across looking, that Hamas is trying to look like they can work with Fatah, and Fatah would never doesn't want to look like they'll be involved in this kind of thing. So it was absolutely a total impractical thing to do to begin with. It was just like, what do you do it for? And really, what it comes down to is that you no longer see anyone, these terrorists, feel bad about it. They want to do this. They want to do it, and that really came out. There was no cheshbon. There's no cheshbon to do this. There was no purpose to do this. There was no reason. It was just, we want to cause harm. We just want to. Why? Because we want to cause harm, and you see it. You see it, and Rahman al-Islam, and it's a real Rahman al-Islam that happens, is that when you see what happened to us, that you get a couple, obviously, some people outside the klal, outside the norm, who do the same thing to an Arab kid. It really
hasn't been proven yet, though.
Well, there's still. The point is, they arrested him. The point is that the one thing though that's big difference is that in ourselves we're not proud of it.
Right. Yeah.
We're not proud of it. We don't like it.
No.
What Golda Meir said
Yep.
to Anwar Sadat. Okay, we can't forgive you making our sons kill yours.
Yeah.
And our boys. The fact of the matter is, it's right. So the fact is that's the difference.
Yeah.
But the truth is, what it really comes down to is you're just dealing with people who just want to harm, and it's like really, it's just troubling, and I think that's why this was so bad, because it was so obviously an act of just hatred.
Mm-hmm.
So the act of this kidnapping was just an act of
pure hatred.
we want to harm Jews, and no cheshbonos, we don't care, and it's very sad. Anyways, but for sure it should do that, and also it should be a schus that what has to be done into the future, what has to be done in terms of Gaza and Gaza, whatever. Okay, it should be done. Okay, but with the minimum of casualties. All
the reserves getting dropped. There's all these people that are getting dropped.
But the fact is, we also have to have a sense. The sadness of all this is that there are still.
Are going to be lost.
But there's a lot of people are going to be. There's a lot of innocent people on the other side also going to be lost. And the fact is that one of the things that always hits me, and I think this is a real sadness, is when the terrorists started taking over in not just Gaza, but on the West Bank as well, in the Yehuda Shomron, whatever.
Yeah.
The first people they targeted was the moderate Arabs. Okay, I went to Israel in 1980. Israeli Arabs are very happy to be in Israel.
Oh, for sure,
Israeli Arabs, like Jewish Israelis?
No, Israeli Arabs.
Arabs in Israel.
A lot of Arabs, they have rights in Israel that no one has in the Arab countries.
Yeah. Sure.
The sad thing is moderates who said, listen, let's try and work it out. They were targeted by the extremists.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the first thing that happened is any Arab would say, listen, let's make peace or whatever it is. You don't have that voice anymore, because what the first thing the extremists did is they made anyone who would have been a moderate, anyone who would have been someone who could have, or they made them afraid to speak up.
Yeah, that's what's going on to the Christian Palestinians.
Right. It's a very sad thing. Anyways, let's get back to this. Okay, so the fact of the matter is the key point over here he's saying is, even if the guy doesn't get it right, Kal B'Shraya, he knows at the end, Kodesh Baruch Hu knows that it's wrong. But he put in all the right effort, and he did what he had to do. It's a mitzvah. He had a chiyuv to Ra, okay?
But doing everything he's trying to do right, and he still comes out doing
the wrong. It's still a mitzvah.
Thing.
It's still a mitzvah. Because the process is key, and we're going to see this later in
10
Moshe.
points for trying.
Okay,
It's
not only that. It's
10 points for effort.
Not even just 10 points for effort. It's the whole point is the effort.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, in a certain way, and that's what he's going to get to this. That's why he says later on. Later on, he says over here. He says, okay, but kabel schar al haraso. He'll be makabel schar. That's what he was supposed to do. Even though he didn't get it right. Because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. He wanted that effort. He wanted that work. Okay? And he says a big chochacha for this is from the Gemara in Shabbos. Okay, the Gemara in Shabbos he says the point is like this: there's a machalokes in the Gemara between Rabbi Eliezer, I think it's Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. Mila is doich Shabbos. Okay? Mila meaning you can cut on Shabbos even though it's a tikkun, even though it's actually a malacha, you can do mal on Shabbos.
Like Mila, bris Mila.
Bris Mila.
Yeah.
Bris Mila.
I've
But preparations for bris Mila. In other words, what happens if you forgot the knife in Rosh Hashanah? Okay? Can you carry the knife from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah in order to do the Mila? So Chachamim paskin not. That's the way we paskin. You cannot be machal Shabbos for preparation to Mila.
So you have to have it in the house.
Yeah. Otherwise you can't. It's not Doich Shabbos.
What's Rishus Rabbi again? Is that like
that's public domain? Public domain.
Like the thing of the Eruv and stuff like that.
Right. And then talking. Okay. Rabbi Eliezer said no. The Mila is Doich Shabbos, and you can do things to prepare for Mila on Shabbos. So if you have to sharpen the knife, then you can do that. Rabbi Eliezer holds. The Chum hold no. Okay. And he says there was a city, one city that paskin like Rabbi Eliezer. He was the Rav, and they paskin and they followed his halacha. Even though the whole rest of Klal Yisrael did not follow that psak. But in his city, they did this. The rest of Klal Yisrael held it was a Chilul Shabbos. Mechuyev skila, done with Chasra and Edom. Okay, they were obligated for the death sentence, for stoning if it would have been done, with warnings and witnesses. But in this city, it was a chiyuv because Mila was Doich Shabbos. They had to do Mila. He says, and what happened? This one city paskin like this, not that lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu schar gadol. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them a tremendous reward. Shemetu bizmanim. Okay. 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 Something bizman. Why? Gezeres machz rishak gezeres alamila, because there was a gezeres on Mila by the Romans. Lo gazra lo ta'ir. They did not geyser on this year. Okay. In other words, the rest of the Romans said, you do Mila is under pain of death. This one city, the Romans didn't touch. Okay. Even though Psak Halacha really wasn't like Rabbi Eliezer, but in that city could pass like Rabbi Eliezer. He was a posek, he could pass like him. So he's trying to show that and even on such an important thing as a chiyuv skiva mezuzah, it wasn't like, oh well, maybe we should. This is your psak, you follow it, and that's really comes out from Kim Chaim. So the point is that you accept divergent opinions. It's a reflection of the fact that it's the process that gives values. This person says kosher, this person says treif. Okay? This person says kosher, a psak that is kosher, and the psak was done properly by someone who was worthy, who was able to give psak and so forth and so forth. He should eat the piece of meat. And that's okay. And it doesn't have to be worried, oh, maybe I'm getting it wrong. No, the idea is because the effort is really key.
Is this just exclusive to the halacha of if that's the way it's done in your area?
Okay.
Or can you, if you work at thing and this is what you believe in, and even in that area it's not done that way.
You're dealing with how does psak work in a communal setting? Who has the authority in the community? So that's a little bit more complicated. If there's a Rav in the city, then the Rav sets a tone for the city, then you as a Yachid may be bound by him. At least for sure before Hesya. Okay?
Even if you've done everything to work to understand.
So the fact is that because there's a communal standard. Like for example, but on the other hand, there's idea. I mean that leads into the famous case of Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua, where Rabbi Yeshua was cholek with the Sanhedrin on what day was Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Gamliel told him you have to come on the day that you think is Yom Kippur, and you have to come to me carrying your purse, your money purse on Yom Kippur, in order to make it clear to the Olam that you follow the psak of the Sanhedrin. It's a little bit different because it's a communal. Because in terms of Rosh Chodesh, in terms of dates, there's essential authority, whatever the Sanhedrin says.
I didn't get that. Why did one rabbi tell him to come
because he was trying to make a point that there has to be a universally accepted date, Klal Yisrael. You can't have one person keeping Yom Kippur one day and another person keeping another day. That's a special din in Sanhedrin, and the establishment of the calendar and so forth. But the fact is that in any community, it gets a little bit more complicated. But if you have a Rav of community, then the Rav then people generally have to follow the Rav. If you are in the community, what you do in your house may be a little bit more open. The fact is, we don't have Rabbanim of the community anymore. When we just have
everyone has their own rabbi, and they can be from somewhere else completely different.
So the fact is, but there is issues of how you should behave in the community when there's communal Rav and so forth. And the fact is that it gets to points where
so you don't hold like his.
When it becomes issues for Hestia, then there's arguments you should follow a certain idea in terms of what's out there in public. So in public, so there's a little bit more of a imposition in terms of public behavior. Okay, so that becomes significant. So the point is, but what it comes down to is that it's the very fact that there is divergent opinions and divergent ideas, and Rabbi Moshe is saying that he's not presenting the viewpoint that both divergent opinions are correct. It's a different argument. Elu ba'elu, there's different understandings of how Elu ba'elu works. Rabbi Moshe is saying, even in a case where God knows what's right, in other words, you have a piece of meat in front of you, God knows whether it was really pork or not. You have to paskin, you have to come to a halachic conclusion, okay? But He knows what the truth is. He's telling you, what Moshe is saying is that the process that leads to the psak, that's really the key. And that is even more important than actually getting it right, kalpei shmaya. So if you're doing something and maybe kalpei shmaya, this really was a piece of pork, but the psak came down totally correct in terms of human analysis and so forth and so forth, and this was a total opinion that a human being could correctly arrive at, and through his logical abilities and so forth and so forth, then vis-a-vis the individuals, that's what eating that piece of meat was correct, because it was based upon the process of halachic analysis. Now this is extremely important in terms of Torah Sheba'al Peh, because one of the big issues in Torah Sheba'al Peh is the rabbinic involvement. Okay, it's like a lot of people will say, I want to do what God wants me to do. I don't want what the rabbis say. Okay, and everything is that's that opinion, that's that interpretation or whatever. The fact is, what?
It's like the Sadducees.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, but the fact is that.
Or the Karaites.
Yeah, but even when you get into, even in terms of verse analysis, that you, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, the Sadducees and the Karaites actually had broader verse analysis than the Prussian Rabbinites. See, in a certain way, Torah Sheba'al Peh also put a parameter on what analysis we would accept or not. In other words, when you have a pasuk, you have a reading of a verse, right? What does that statement mean? So, what comes out from Torah Sheba'al Peh is two things. Number one, it gives conclusions that are almost totally contradictory to the simple reading of the verse. The classic example I like to give is by the case of Miriam and Zipporah. Read the case of Miriam and Zipporah. Al Dvar HaKushi Deshelakach, on the Kushite woman that Moshe took. So Chazal understood it to mean that Moshe separated from Zipporah, and Miriam was upset that Moshe separated from Zipporah. But Moshe basically separated from his wife at the time, after after Har Sinai, because he felt that he could never have relations with his wife because he doesn't know when the Baruch was going to appear to him, and people had to separate 3 days before Har Sinai because they were going to be relations. No, he didn't. That's the whole point. So Dvara Kushit. So if you see Rashi, Kushit says, yeah, beautiful. It's referring to Sipporah, and it was talking of that's something different. Kushit is a way of saying that she was beautiful, and Rashi understands that Miriam is upset with Moshe for separating from his wife.
Because she was beautiful.
No. But Rashi says Kushit in this case means beautiful, and Miriam was upset because Moshe separated from his beautiful wife Sipporah. Okay. Which is not the way the verse reads. I remember what really hit me like this is I remember reading some author, like some writer who was writing something about who was talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, and he talked about Moshe Rabbeinu's Ethiopian woman. And I got so upset and so forth and so forth. Then it dawned on me that's really the way the guy. It's really what he's just reading the verse, but we understand it that way. So the point is what a Karaite would say. Read the verse. Verse says he took a Kushite, actually he took an Ethiopian woman on the side. Okay, in addition, that seems to be what he was upset about.
Right before Har Sinai.
Right after. No, this is after.
Or right after.
Well, no, this was what Miriam was upset about. They took and by the way, there are a couple. This is not the way Chazal learns. There are a couple Rishonim who bring down that pshat. There are a couple of Rishonim who say that if you go according to Pshat, that's what it is. I think the Bechor Shor is a Rishon, is about one of the Bali Tosis. He actually says that.
What's
that he says that Moshe took a second woman.
Being that she...
So some Rishonim believe that?
Because that's the simple... He says according to Pshat...
Not simply, it's just her skin was darker because of...
But it says Asher Lakach. He took another wife. The truth of the matter is, the Bechor Shor says, is that Moshe took the second wife, and he says the reason Moshe, and he says something fascinating. He says the reason Moshe took a second wife is because the greater the person, the greater his Yetzer Hara. So Moshe needed a second woman because of his Yetzer Hara.
Who is his first wife?
I don't know if that logic really makes sense, though.
That's the Bechor Shor actually gives that shot. He says, I think it's Bechor Shor says. I think he says that the fact is that the simple reading of the pshat is that Moshe took a Kushite woman, okay, Dvar HaKushit Asher Lakach, a Kushite woman that he took. So he says it means he took a second wife, a second or a concubine, a second woman, whatever, and that was what Miriam was upset about. That's Pashut Pshat. Okay. Chazal did not learn that way. The Gemara does not learn that way. The Chazal did not learn that way. The classic way of learning is the way Rashi learns. Is that Miriam was upset that he separated from Sipporah. It explains that they called Sipporah Kushite because she was beautiful, and Miriam was upset that he separated from her. Okay. The fact of the matter is that what it comes down to is that's the way that you understand it through Torah Sheba'al Peh.
Yeah.
Torah Sheba'al Peh can change the actual literal reading of the verse. That's the thing that the Siddukim and the Karaites were always upset about. You can't use this Torah Sheba'al Peh to change the basic reading of the verse. On the other hand, as with many verses, if you ever study literature or whatever, you know that there's 5 different ways of understanding this poem. And the poet sometimes will tell you, doesn't matter what I thought of. What do you think it means? So the truth is, if you look at Karaites, okay, the Karaites actually, on the other hand, said that any analysis of the verse is what you're supposed to do. So on the other hand, they were actually broader.
Wow.
They actually
that's not just
what? But they always went back to the verse. Right, no,
broadening your own thing.
Okay, because what Torah Sheba'al Peh does is Torah Sheba'al Peh gives you a methodology of reading the verse, and this methodology may leave the simple reading of the verse. On the other hand, the methodology may also put a limitation on reading the verse. applying Torah Sheba'al Peh, you can't read the verse as broadly as the Karaites read it. So in certain ways, the Karaites read verses more broadly than we would. In certain ways, they were narrower. Okay. The point is that they always, but the thing is that in halacha they always look for black and white, what's the law, whatever. What we have is we're also looking for what's the halacha, whatever. But the fact is what Torah Sheba'al Peh does is it opens up the human involvement. It basically says, right, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a methodology that the text of the Chumash and the methodology of Torah is to cause you to think. We can't understand the Chumash, okay, unless you actually think about it. So, for example, if you compare this to, let's say, Christian fundamentalists always say, what does the verse say? And I'll pray to get the right, to understand. Not to think, to pray. The fact of the matter is that what we want to do is to analyze, and we believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to read between the lines. In other words, to us, reading Ma'aser Bereishis and understanding that Ma'aser Bereishis is almost impossible to understand from a simple reading. And we're asking questions. We're supposed to ask questions.
I mean, a lot of atheists, they will just say, "Oh, that's literally," because the Jewish atheists will say that the Torah is just literally what they're taking it for, just literal interpretation.
And we don't ever take it literally.
I think a lot of
because we don't take it literally. Because our belief is that the text came with an accompanying. I don't want to say an accompanying partner. Torah Sheba'al Peh is not just the explanation of the text. Torah Sheba'al Peh is the partner with the text. I gave you Shimshon Flor's Persha's understanding as well that the Torah Sheba'al Peh is the lecture and the text are the notes on the lecture. But the fact is that it's a partnership, and we are called upon to analyze and to think. Now, that basically says that you're called upon to be a human being in the analysis. You are to bring yourself, you are to bring your mind to the analysis. Once you say that, you can't call Torah as the pristine statement of God. And that's really what Rabbi Moshe is getting over here. So we don't have a statement.
Interesting, because then with the atheist view, you could say that if they're using their own mind and approach to logically understand something, they shouldn't just be taking the Torah so literally. They have to use their mind to.
Because the starting point, this is the whole point.
It kind of contradicts what they're.
Because the starting point is that it's a text, and they take it as a simple starting point. Where our starting point is a text it's text that's part of a whole system that demands human thought and human involvement. Okay, so the fact is listen, I just gave a class somewhere, and in the class there was a same-sex couple, a same-sex lesbian couple, and I mentioned something about concepts of Torah and homosexuality and so forth and so forth, and I said, you really, you said, you guys get into this issue and that issue. What really is the question for an Orthodox rabbi? Like I'm looking at I'm not a judgmental person. I don't judge anybody. I don't have that person's nisayon, so I'm not going to judge them. But the point is how do I understand the Isser? So I said, what's the question for me? What you have all these issues, but what would be the question for me as an Orthodox rabbi? The question for me as an Orthodox rabbi is, why would God create a same-sex attraction? That's the problem. You're arguing, and psychology is arguing there's this thing as same-sex attraction. So my question is, so why would God create the same-sex attraction? Now, so one answer might be, it's a Yetzer Hara. It says, but from an Orthodox perspective, what's the problem with that being the answer? Because we have a Gemara that says that every drive that exists has a method of satisfying the drive that's either a mitzvah or at least parv. There's a Gemara that says, for example, if someone is born with a drive for bloodshed,
then he can become a moil or
right. So that's what I said. So I said you see, that's the question for me. Yeah. You're arguing it's the same-sex drive, so I have to figure out. So what's the purpose?
How could that make it?
That to me, because to me, that's the question, because I'm involved in trying to understand life. I'm involved in trying to understand the Kodesh Baruch Hu. The point is therefore the text to me, the Torah, is to bring me involved in trying to understand God. In other words, there's two parts to Torah. One part of Torah is to be an Eved Hashem. That's to follow the halacha. God says jump, you jump. But the other side is to be a Tzelem Elokim. Tzelem Elokim is to try and understand the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Try to be Mahu Rachum, Mafatay Rachum. To try in the same way he's compassionate. You should be compassionate, but also you're trying to understand what he's thinking. What's the point behind this? This is a Rambam's concept. What's the point just from? The fact of the matter is, if it's involved in trying to understand it, you're trying to understand it. We understand this limitation because you're not God. You're only a human being. But the point is, you're trying to understand. Right. But the point is, you're trying to understand life. You're not just trying to do the halacha. You're trying to understand the reason for it. That's really what Nasa and Nishma came down to. Nishma was really the commitment to try and understand. Okay, so the point is that comes about through analysis, and the truth is that's really what happens when the Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us Torah Sheba'al Peh. It was to say, bring your minds involved in this. I want you to be involved. But a consequence of that is you're not going to get the pristine answers. You see the way Moshe framed this.
Anyways.
But a Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't tell you the black and white answers. Right. If he's going to get you involved,
highly subjective then.
So the fact is, there's a subjectivity and the objectivity. Mm-hmm. You can't just be subjective. You have to be learned. You have to be investigated. But there's still somewhat of a subjectivity in the objectivity because it involves you. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's what. Now we're going to see a little bit how Ramosha defines this question like that. Okay. But Ramosha is basically going to get to a point that first thing he's doing is he's basically establishing that learning Torah is what the key is, and you are called upon to make decisions. That's what's key over here. So we saw that, and this is the elevated Didakim Chaim. The fact is, even if you don't get it right, the point is that that's the way it was created. Because it wants to get involved with you.
Well, it's not really getting it right.
That's what he's saying. It's the interesting language is emes lahara versus emes kal b'shraya. Emes kal b'shraya is getting the right answer that God knows. Okay? Emes lahara is getting it right in terms of your obligation to get it to within your analysis and so forth. So Ramosh has already said it's not just simply here's my opinion. You have to be a person who has the ability to think and analyze and so forth and so forth. But if you are of that ability in this generation, pursuant to the yardstick of a person in this generation, okay, then you are called upon to be involved in that decision making, because that's what it's about. Okay, now, so let's go on now. We'll read the next paragraph. Okay, you see this. Before she came to Sanhedrin Davav. Okay, so he says all of this, the Dayan, once they know who they're dunning and who they're dunning before and what's and what will be and their obligation in giving din. Shema Yomer Hadayan Mali Batzar. Why should I be involved in his problems? Why do I have to be involved? I might get it wrong. Right? Why do I have to do this? If I make a mistake, I'll be punished. Okay? Because he says that God's with him in Dvarim. Ein lo l'dayan ela masha ein avros. That the dayan only has what his eyes see. It's a classic saying. In the dayan masha ein avros. You can only call it the best you can see it. And that's all the Kodesh Baruch Hu asks from you.
There's no witnesses, then you can't do anything.
Well, no, but the point is, even then, you have to come up with. You can only go with what you have, right? in terms of your analysis. And so forth. Perushashi, de'ein lo l'dayin lira v'limno atzmo min hadin, that a dayan is not supposed to be afraid and to remove himself from the din. El lefi mashe einav roas lidan. We know that all you're going to be expected is to judge according to your ability. B'yiskaven l'chotzi l'tzadko v'amito. You're trying to get the justice and the truth. V'shuv lo ya'anish, you won't be punished. It says people might be afraid. What are you get involved? I'm going to be punished if I get it wrong. No. If you do it right, if you do the best job you can, you're not going to be punished. In fact, that's a mitzvah. This is emes ha'ra. That you have to come to this conclusion even though you might not get it absolutely right. Because what it's about, the whole process of Torah Shabbat Peh, is the process. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it over this way. Okay? In other words, it's not just this is the best way, we're human this way. It's that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created it this way. It's one of the big differences when you analyze Torah versus the way a lot of people do things secularly. Secular is given a reality, and then you try to explain why the reality is this way. So people, they give an answer. There has to be this law because of this situation, or in other words, the situation comes first, and then there's a question of how you respond to it. Okay, and most of human laws, they'll sit there and say people developed into families because they recognize that the only way you'll have commitment to raise a family, to raise the children, if they have a family structure. So what happens is morality, usually there's the reality, and then there's a response of the development of morality, development of law, and so forth to a situation. The famous statement of Histakol Baraisa Ubarei Olam, that God looked into the Torah and created the world. What does it mean? It means that God created the situation of the world to substantiate the law that He wanted to have involved in the world. In other words, it's not just simply there's poor people in the world, therefore you have to give tzedakah. It's because Baruch Hu wanted to have a concept that we have a feeling of caring for others, we have empathy, we have that. Therefore, He created, a certain aspect of needs and of others, so that you would develop empathy. Okay, so it's a very different way of analyzing things. It's like the objective is it's something that like, for example, it's not just that you have to have a man and a woman get married because this is the only way you can propagate. The point is the reason that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a world that you need a man and woman to get together in order to have children is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to have man and woman form bonds. Okay? It was the other way around. Like, for example,
understand a proper relationship.
And therefore, like, for example, right.
Getting along with
right. So that's why he developed that in order to create the propagation. It's a classic. Rav Shapir Soloveitchik says something very interesting. It's not that you have a kid. It's not that you get married in order to have a kid. It's not just marriage is the way to have kids. The idea is you have a kid to reflect what marriage is about. So he says, Rashi actually says over there, it's the kid. The whole point of marriage is to bring two people together, and the two people being opposite sex. Okay? And the fact that the child is created in this manner is to reflect that it brings the two people together. So the point is because
the bond.
Right. So the cause and effect is not so simple. Why? Because God created the situation. See, Histakol Baraisa Ubarei Olam says, what do I want? What do I want people involved with in terms of the challenge of life? I'm going to create a world that allows this challenge to develop. Not that not that the world was created and we're just figuring out a way of developing it. So that changes the whole analysis of things.
And the sexual desire for another person, like that feeling, where is that?
So the fact is, right, it's all part of it. It's all part of it.
Like, do we?
Yeah, that's all part of it. The fact of the matter is human sexuality is a very complex. It's a very complex drive. It's a drive that it's a topic that is not studied enough, to be honest. Just psychologically, we don't fully understand it.
A lot.
Yeah,
just to experience.
But I have an article up on my on the website, nishma.org. There's an article there about love and sexuality, and you know, it was very funny. When I was at YU, they were making a blind date party between the sophomores in Yeshiva College, the boys, and the freshmen in Stern College. So me and a friend both signed up to be in this.
Not a bad idea.
In this blind date arrangements. So he happened to know the girl who was putting the couples together. So, and she happened to be up at YU. So he walked over to her, and let's say he walked over to her, and I was standing to the side over here. You know the story already, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so he was standing over there. So so he went over to her and said, who am I going out with? And she said, so. So he says, so what does she look like? So the guy says, what does she look like? So this girl, who was like dressed to the T and was wearing makeup, so like that, said, looked at him and said, are you interested in the body or the neshama? Like really trying to put him down. Like, what do you mean asking what she looks like? You mean neshama? So he looked at him and said, if I was only interested in the neshama, I'd go out with him, pointing to me, right? Which really got the point across. Okay, so the fact of the matter is that there is an aspect of physical attraction. What that aspect of physical attraction is, how it works, and so forth and so forth. There is an aspect of physical attraction. But the fact is, there is something that, and that's built upon the fact that since God created the world, okay, and He created these things this way, so therefore there must be a reason for it. Now, therefore, our job is to try and understand them. We don't sit there and not think. A lot of people get it wrong with Nasa B'Nishma. Nasa B'Nishma is not just we're going to do. It's we're going to do, and then we're going to try and understand it, because we have to try and understand the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Okay, because that's an important aspect. So therefore, that involves human involvement. That makes the process significant, because the process is our involvement. So the point is that a Kodesh Baruch Hu specifically gave over a Torah that is in such a way to involve human involvement, and that becomes very, very significant in terms of understanding that yes, the more you bring human beings involved, the more you're going to have the fallacy of human thought, the weakness of human thought, but that's a key part of what Kodesh Baruch Hu wants. Okay, so I'm going to end it here.